not at all.
Teresa, do you live on your own then?
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry, were you interviewing?
No, they were just filming you two chat. I think I'll interview you later, but in case you dash off, because you're staying in the hotel, aren't you? Can I just ask you a couple of questions?
Yes, certainly.
Sorry, mind you away.
No, it's all
No,
right.
you can stay here, join in.
So, and perhaps you can, I don't know, answer on behalf of your mother as well. I mean, how... ¿Quieres que se gire un poco ella?
Sí, mejor si van a
Yes, please.
He pasado por ella, pero no sé. Casi que he pasado por ella. Ya está. Es que estoy desorientado.
I don't want to upset anybody in any way, so if they've got anything impertinent, please tell me. ¿Podemos? So,
What? Thalidomide, as far as I can remember, because of morning sickness. And I felt totally unwell.
how often did you take it?
I was swallowing the tablets. It's quite a few years back, and one doesn't remember such details.
And how long did it take for you to realise that Nick's deformities were due to you taking the tablets? Was it?
It wasn't until my stepmother-in-law, whilst I was visiting her in Belgium, remembered that I was swallowing a lot of tablets because my pregnancy was confirmed there. And she saw pictures in German magazines showing exactly the same sort of malformations as Nicholas had. And she was convinced that this was the cause. And I thought, no. But eventually I did get it confirmed, and I was taken on by Kimberbull, the solicitors, that he was a confirmed thalidomide damaged.
And what process did you have to go through for this to be confirmed? Did you have to, was Nicholas assessed?
He was assessed by a doctor who specialized in those things. But remember, it was many years ago, so I cannot quite remember the doctor's name.
No, that doesn't matter. But in Spain, for the process has just asked the thalidomide affected people, or who say that they think they are, to supply photographs. So I don't think a photograph is a suitable way to diagnose thalidomide. What other things did you have to supply?
He was examined by the doctor himself in person.
You didn't have to supply the tablets or any prescription?
They tried to find out whether those prescriptions I had were still on file. Whether that was successful or not, I don't know. You must remember that at that time we were all younger, more ignorant, more innocent, and did not understand the complexities of the situation. Today's youngsters in their early 20s are far more clued up than we were.
Of course. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Can I
yes,
come in on that one? What people don't realise, the public was, a lot of the mother's medical records were suddenly vanished.
Yes, that's quite true.
So I think that needs to be said, because amazingly they were there one moment and the next they were shredded.
Yes, on my records, you see, they said, I said I've had 2 children. They said, well, it's not in your records. So I said 2 children don't drop out of the sky. So it could substantiate that. But I can't prove it or not prove it, because they could have got lost, they could have been weeded out, etc., and so forth.
What year was Nicholas born in?
59.
In 59. And what were the doctor's reactions when he was born?
Just one of those things. Nature got her homework wrong.
And I imagine you went through feeling terribly guilty when you found out that it could have perhaps been the tablets.
Probably mixed emotions. Again, it's going very much back in time, because I had been in Great Ormond Street Hospital with polio, and therefore I had seen many things. And when Nicholas was born, I looked into his eyes and I could see that his brain was all right. And I thought, that's a great thing, never mind the hands, because I had seen so much also of mentally disturbed children in Great Ormond Street, and that's another difficult situation to deal with. So I was probably quite constructive.
And what about you, Teresa? Are your parents still alive?
My parents are in their, they're alive and they're in their 80s, yeah.
And are you able to discuss the situation with them easily, or is it a very tough subject?
Well, I don't feel I really do need to discuss it, because I think they have had a very tough time. They were emotionally going through a whirlwind, because they were fobbed off by the medical profession. The records were diminished. For instance, I was what was on the X list or the Y list, and that meant that you weren't thalidomide. Doctors were saying, yes, we did give that prescription out, and then saying to other parents, no, we didn't give that prescription out. So, like, for instance, I wasn't compensated until the very latter end, because, especially from Liverpool, where I'm from, it was a very deprived sociological area. Lots of people were going through poverty. The doctors were just thinking, well, we'll give this tablet out. It was the wonder drug of the world.
But your mother remembers taking it.
She does, but don't forget, my mum was an Irish mum. She wasn't given any education. So what the doctor said in those days, she did. There was no questioning of saying, well, why and what and for. Like today, for instance, women are not even given greater choices of being informed. That's why I'm not for the thalidomide drug to carry on, because I feel that women are still not being given informed choices, because the medical profession are still going to be making financial gain from it. And I also think for the thalidomide drug to be given for cancer patients, who would deny that? Except that how can you truly prove, I mean, we know it's a nerve gas, but it will temporarily relieve the situation. But if that person's died, they'll say, oh yeah, it was through cancer. They won't say it's through a thalidomide drug.
When I asked you about your mother, it wasn't to question whether or not she should have thought about taking the drug. It was whether she had to admit to any doctors or prove
yes,
taking.
She did have to prove it. That's what I'm saying. They suddenly said they couldn't find the prescription. They suddenly said that I wasn't thalidomide. The doctor wouldn't give the note to say that he prescribed the drug. So it was a major turmoil for her, because obviously she knew that there was something going wrong, because there was 12 of beneficiaries within the Liverpool area. So Alderhay Hospital had liaised with Germany. So it was our specialists that had done the liaising. So there was lots of rumours going around what was happening. So it must have been quite full of turmoil for her to having to prove that. In fact, I remember it very much, and she was in a lot of tears emotionally, and knowing that, this was a man-made drug. I wasn't born as a disabled person. It was through a drug, and I think she wanted justice for that.
But when did she start this process? When you were already, because I mean, she must have had enough on her hands trying to cope with guilt and.
Well, I'd like to say that I think it's always been a hard process for all the parents. They've all struggled psychologically, but I also think a lot of thalidomide survivors are struggling psychologically, because society can be very oppressive. And unless you've been given the assertiveness skills, socialisation skills, and a positive education to be able to fight this injustice, this is what, for instance, many of us are doing, like Nick and myself, and Guy and Jeff, because we know there's a lot of people in that position that are not able to do this.
So in the end, how did they diagnose you as definitely thalidomide? What was the process?
I think eventually the doctor did agree to give my mum the written letter to say I was. And then we all had to go for examinations, so it was very apparent that I was. And that's what I need to say. I mean, those assessments were done years ago. We're being temporarily reassessed, but obviously they're quite rigged. We shouldn't have to be going through that psychological probing and medical processes again. It should be automatically given. I mean, it's incredibly obvious that of our impairment and all what we need to go through.
There are those that, I mean, I'm following what I've read up in Spain, where the Spanish doctor who is doing the research to test, well, to check whether Spanish people who are claiming to be thalidomiders definitely are. And none of these people have been checked physically. They've only had to send photographs and send their mother's prescription or the pill, have a letter from their doctor, who probably is dead by now anyway. All these ridiculous things. But
we all had to go through that. And I was also questioned myself of what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I was separated from my parents. And at 14 years of age, I think that was just totally inappropriate. You would not be, I'm a social worker, and you just would not be allowed to do that in this day and age. Because obviously there were very manipulative types of questions that were being asked to us, you know. And I remember it was a very, very black day when we had to go for that assessment. And I still find it humiliating and embarrassing to have to even say about what we had to go through. We've had to go through a lot more than other disabled people, because, you know, you've had to stick an extra finger out and say, I can't move that, just for the sake of one or two more pennies, if that's the way to put it. Which, you know, and for a female to have to go through that is just been more than oppressive than ever. I mean, you know, they had to send photographs of me when I was a teenager, and you're just developing, and most teenagers are very self-conscious at the best of times, not to be put into a bikini and then in the nude, which I find that is just quite pervert, really, in this day. You know what would happen then, and I certainly think if that's the Spanish government doing that now, I think it's quite degrading, and in my opinion, would be very much with child protection issues. Although they are not children, but I assume you're saying from when they were children they had to send photographs.
Well, they only started the investigation last year, so they have to send pictures of them. I'm not sure if when they were children or what they look like now. I'd have to find that out. But for example, Pepe Riquelme, who's the president of the association, he had so many problems. He was born with a foot coming out of his knee. So he had lots and lots of problems and pains and whatever, and in the end they had to amputate. So as they're doing the tests now, his leg isn't in the same situation. And he said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to exhume my leg from the grave?
There are still plenty of specialists around that still have great knowledge of thalidomide. They should be conversing with them and do a planning exercise and work in partnership with other countries, especially the UK, because I'm getting the impression now we're the beacon light at the moment. I'm more than happy to help with that kind of process, because it's very obvious, like a lot of us were on, because we've got deformity of the nose.
The nose?
Yeah, the nose was a very significant factor.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so a lot of them got through with that. There are lots of others that have slipped through the net, but as you say, we're going back like 47 years, 48 years ago. I mean, a lot of the medical profession probably thought at the time, we don't really want to gauge it because we don't want to get it wrong. So there probably are some people that have got through that, not thalidomide either, who are just genetically being affected. And there's no way I would take any form of compensation off them, because they deserve it if they were put through that process like myself.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you live on your own now?
Yeah, yes, yeah. But I have, theoretically, I'm meant to have 24-hour support, but my local authority can't afford that.
Mm-hmm. This is in Liverpool, is it?
Seftonor, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And although it's all written on paper, they won't physically. They said they can't physically or financially provide that support. Or the next best thing they could offer is institutionalisation or care, which I find totally oppressive. I'm only 47. I think I lead a very positive lifestyle for who I am. Just because my body's like a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old doesn't mean to say that I want to live a life like that. You know, I mean, young people like ourselves shouldn't be put into that position. You need to have life choices and dignity, and to be given that empowerment. Because I'm a social worker anyway, and I work with children and families, I say that as my role model, to say we need to start empowering you, saying how much you can do, not what you can't do. And with the right financial assistance, your lifestyle will be so much better.
So how much assistance do you get so far then, if you don't get the 24 hours?
Well, I only get 33, which is absolutely pittance.
33 a week?
33 hours a week. Yeah.
So how do you work that out in a day? I mean,
well, you're meant to be able to plan it and say what care you need within a certain time, but you know, practically that's just totally impossible, because some days I'm just not capable of getting up till the afternoon because my health deteriorates so much, my muscles have finished, and I can't manage to move till later on in the afternoon.
So it's horrible to have a routine.
So where does that practically live in with my lifestyle? Not so ever. And also from my employment prospects, you know, it doesn't fit in like that at all. So I do feel Grünenthal really need to sit up, because we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep knocking on the door, and we're going to be, you know, we're going to embarrass them and humiliate them, because as far as they're concerned, they're offering empathy. We don't want empathy. We want empowerment and of financial choices of who we want, what we want to do, whether we want to go, you know, within our life, and also like to have the appropriate equipment to be able to help us what we need. For instance, like I've had to pay over £60,000 for a car to be converted. Electric wheelchair is 10 to 12,000. The local authority will not provide that because they said they can't afford it. So I need this type of a wheelchair because I need it 24 hours a day. I mean, artificial legs worked at one time, but certainly never again. In fact, they've ruined my body, but it helped me get...
Why is that?
Well, because of the weight of them, the way they were so heavy, the way you weren't properly fitted with them. You know, you're talking about the Heather Mills situation. She could get one every day. You know, she has not suffered as the pain that we've suffered. And, you know, she was given all the media profile and legs galore. And we were just given with the old NHS, whatever was afforded. And also, you've got to remember, like we were growing up, like I was growing up as a child, so I constantly needed new artificial legs because I was growing. At the time they made the last pair, I was out, I needed a new pair, but they didn't want to do it because it was not financially viable for them. So, you know, they were doing it from their budget from April to April. So really, I actually think that has had a major effect on my whole body as well. I mean, although I've got short arms, they still don't work very well.
I imagine you got strain in your shoulders.
I have shoulders, neck, body. I have to have a special bed now that vibrates all the time. We need to be going for physiotherapy and massage every day to maintain some form of a positive lifestyle there.
And do you get that?
No, because the NHS can't afford that.
So how often do you have a...
I don't get it because...
At all?
No. Because I couldn't afford £30 every day. You know, that's just having, well, that's what you call a major luxury. But likes of Heather Mills can get that, you know. And I would say that thalidomide is the beacon for disabled, because we've gone before them and we're helping them by opening extra doors, by saying that they should also have their justice as well, that the government should give as much financial support as possible. Disability is always on the bottom rung of the ladder, and it needs to be put on the top. You know,
What sort of things have you had to adapt in your house, and how easy has it been to do that?
My house is, I live in a bungalow and the house has had to be totally adapted, but it's still not to my needs, because now I do need to have, 24-hour support, and I would need more rooms for personal assistance, so you get some privacy. And also, bungalows are so scarce to have these days. I mean, this type of a building would be no good because of all the steps. Who would be able to convert that? It would take millions of pounds. Millions. You're talking about transport. I've just come in a taxi. They charge a lot more because you're a wheelchair user than a non-disabled person. Going on holiday, you'd need 2 personal assistants to help with the lifting, and finding accessible accommodation is a lot more expensive, so you can't go on your cheaper deals. But a lot of other people have got those choices of getting.
You said you drive, and you've had to have your car adapted. Now, how did you find an adapted car to learn how to drive in? Are there special disabled schools?
No, I've been driving since I was 17 years of age. We were set up with that years and years ago. It was a positive project, and I think manufacturers and car companies that are doing adaptations have learned from us, because we are the experts in those areas. We're the experts with electric wheelchairs, with cars, with prosthesis even these days. There's lots of children still being born with congenital difficulties that need our support, because we've been through there the hard way. We've been the pioneers, if that's the way to put it. So that's why Grünenthal don't think, we'll be knocking very hard, because we've got a lot of experience.
I understand I don't know if you've heard about it, there's a thalidomider who moved to Elche in Spain recently. She's on the Thalidomide UK's webpage talking about how she took her especially adapted car to Spain, and this is not allowed in Spain to have specially adapted car, and therefore she was forbidden to drive it.
What a disgrace.
Absolute disgrace.
The Spanish government should be absolutely hung, drawn and quartered for it.
The car was then stolen for not using while she was waiting for the special permits or whatever, and now she maybe has to buy herself a new...
Well, she should be compensated for that, but the Spanish government who have decided that, I'm wondering if they had to utilise a wheelchair for the day, and how they would for transportation, or if they were suddenly lost an arm and a leg, I'm wondering whether they would take the same stance.
Well, there's the Spanish health minister. I don't know if you heard Jeff Adams-Spink's BBC report about Spain's forgotten thalidomide children. He is the health minister in Spain, is disabled himself, I believe, from an accident. And he said that he thinks that the thalidomiders should stop looking for someone to blame, should just carry on with their lives. How do you...
Well, what a wonderful get-out clause. Is that what called on the slippery slope? And does he still want to be in a positive role of government? Because I would imagine the Spanish public would not like to hear anything like that. Never mind the Spanish thalidomide survivors, because they have survived them, and really they should oust them out. And I would be delighted to help them with that, because I think he should be making that type of remark. If any of our MPs in the UK made that type of remark, they would be asked to leave the government. And I think he should be asked to leave the government as well, with no big pay for his pension either, and just let him get an ordinary job and see what it would be really like. Because obviously he's getting a very amazing salary, and to come out with that kind of comment, and he's supposed to be an educated person, I find it's absolutely disgraceful. And I'm surprised the Spanish public are not campaigning for him to be dismissed from government.
Well, he said it to the British BBC. He never said it to the Spanish. But
oh, that's very interesting. Oh, because he doesn't have the guts to say it in
well, I don't know.
country.
I wonder if he would, but we'd have to find out.
He doesn't have the guts to say it in his own country. That's interesting.
Anyway, I forgot to ask you in the beginning, could you please introduce yourself to Cameron, please?
My name is Teresa Smith, and I'm from Southport, Merseyside, England, UK.
And another thing I've noticed, you've got your is it a Labrador or golden?
She's a golden retriever.
Golden retriever.
She's a helping dog.
Because I only knew about them to help the blind, but so how is she helping?
She gets the post and the milk, and she picks things up for me. And she's got the ability to help me with my jacket on and off. And she can pull my skirt down, and she can get my laundry from drawers and things like that.
Oh, wonderful!
So, and also, she's very protective. And she, if anyone tries to approach me, she's right in between me. So she's been an amazing type of dog, and she's brought a lot of positivity into my lifestyle.
So you've had her since she was a baby?
Just over 1 year of age.
And she's specially trained where?
She was trained by a charity, and then I trained her for what I wanted. I was the first person, for instance, I couldn't manage to pick up the milk. So I got her to be trained that she could pick up the milk up to my lap.
Without obviously damaging or...
Yeah, it was in like a special milk carton. And she was the first one to do that.
Amazing.
You know, so that was a major help to me on that.
And so did you have to pay for her yourself? Or?
I had to pay a penny.
Oh, thank God for that.
No, but I have to pay all her own vet fees and all her injections and all. She's on special painkillers, so I have to pay for all that. So the charity did renege on that area, but I'm quite happy to pay for her because she's been such a positive young dog in my lifestyle.
And would you recommend other thalidomiders to get a dog like her?
I would. I mean, I'm very biased because Emmy's very special, and you know you do have to have a very special bond. And there's not. It would depend on the thalidomide person themselves whether they felt that would be beneficial to them. But she's certainly been beneficial to me because there are lots of things that I would like to be able to do, but cannot do.
Well, it's amazing that you managed to teach her to help you get your coat on and things like that. It's absolutely amazing.
But she adores me and she won't go anywhere without me. So
how many months was she when you got her?
She was just over 12 months.
And then how long was it for you to get all the other stuff for her to learn to do all the...
Well, she was mostly trained in the charity and then I trained her for what I wanted to do.
Yeah, how long did that take you? A couple of months?
Yeah. She agreed for about 6 or 7 weeks, and then after that she was perfect.
Well, Teresa, thank you very much for chatting to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you later.
Yeah. Was that okay?
It was fantastic. I'm going to take your... well, I'll have to sell it first, but Spain, it's for the Spanish. So,
and you're very good, by the way. You're very good for something.
I have to take your telephone and your details, then I'll get in contact with you.
I don't mean today. I don't mean for
Ja, oder? Will sie die auf einen Haufen?
Vamos ya para aquí con los italianos. Canadá y después ya vamos. ¿Sabes? Vamos andando por aquí.
I just take all of your telephone numbers and no la hemos preguntado su nombre a la señora antes. Can we just ask your name?
my name.
¿Estás listo? Ready?
My surname is Mrs Dobrik.
Mrs Dobrik. Okay, thank you very much, Mrs Dobrik.
Thank you.
So I will... Dobrik. So if I